We ready?
I think we're ready. I think
Let's run it up.
took a minute to put everything together, but I think we're here, man. All right, this is gonna be this is the first official. I honestly, it's been a lot of work for me to be here. I've been grinding and crafting for a little bit. I've been kind of teasing things here and there for a while. One of the things that has always been important to me personally is radical growth, and I've always valued changing based on new information. When I come to learn something new, especially about myself, I like to craft. I'm like, okay, what does this mean for me? This vision of who I wanted to be versus who I'm becoming, I think, is a conversation that we don't normally have with one another. And one of the things I want to craft and build is authenticity around me, authenticity of expression, authenticity of craft. And one of the biggest values that I hold dear to myself is versatility. What does it mean for somebody to encompass different things? I've said this quote a couple of times, but it's always kind of rung true to me. So there's that famous quote of a jack of all trades is a master of none. And there's actually a second half to that quote. And it goes something to the effect of, but it's still better than a master of one. And that other half is very important to me, because I think for a long time we focus our trade or focus like, hey, we're told this thing, hey, this is who you should be, based on a mind that's still growing, unsure of who it is, where it is that I'm growing. I think identity is incredibly important to me personally too. Without going on too much of a ramble, I think that's just kind of like the energy I want to start this podcast with, right? We're coming from a space of growth, versatility, and what it means for you to live authentically. And for me, I think in my mind, there's no better human than I've perceived that from than you.
Whoa.
All my walk is real. All I pop is seals. Bitches at the crib like it's deal or no deal. I just hit Miami, touchdown with the family. Lime green, Lambo, I can't do no Camry. Wake up, stack bread, put up for my family. One life, one dream, I ain't got no plan B.
I think I speak for a lot of people, dude. I think there's like, since we graduated high school, I think that you've been on socials here and there. I think a lot of us haven't really explored what it means to get to know one another after high school. And I don't even want to make this a conversation about our childhoods, because I think you and I are completely different people from who we grew up for. But I think the values that our family instilled in us still rings true.
Totally.
Who have I had the privilege of getting to know over the years?
What up? I'm Yann Niteka. I'm originally from East Africa, Burundi. I grew up in Fargo. I'm an artist, entrepreneur. I'm a doer. You know what I mean?
A doer.
Yeah, I'm a doer.
A doer. I think I could not agree more. Tell me the story though. Like, please, in so much as you're able to be vulnerable with us.
No,
I want you to protect your energy, because I don't think that all information is worth everybody having. And I think some of that information is intimate. And I also want you to feel like your story is valid. But I think your story to me is incredible, right? I haven't even mentioned the fact that your mom's like a politician. She got a book written and shit. So like your progeny is of highest caliber, right? You come from an African lineage of beauty. And I want you to tell me where that progeny led you. Wherever you want to start in that timeline, start, and then we'll move from there.
For sure. I mean, honestly, like I'm a big believer in vulnerability. Like, I really try to wear my heart on my sleeve, so that's really never an issue, unless it's like a safety thing. Of course,
Absolutely,
you know, but
absolutely.
Like, as far as just being vulnerable and authentic, like, it's just like, I think that like your experience in life is better. Especially if you can like encourage people around you to be vulnerable, you know what I mean? And just because, like, I mean, it's really easy for me just because it's just, I think it's a better life experience. But back to like my life, I guess. I was born in Africa. Like the early years of my life are really like, they released around like the genocide that occurred in Burundi and Rwanda, you know, between Hutus and Tutsis. And I was actually born in Nairobi because it was like unsafe for me to be born in Burundi at the time. Like, and like a big theme in my life too is like I have an incredible mom that you mentioned. And like I always think it's just crazy that she put on or had like the awareness or like, you know, like we're so, at least in our lifetimes in the United States, have been like, are so blessed to not really know conflict for real, for real.
Yeah.
You know, not to invalidate like what we went through growing up, but like
Absolutely.
on a general basis, like as a nation, we don't know like conflict on our soil. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And like that makes you appreciate things. Even though I wasn't really cognizant for that like that, like my life is literally so influenced by that conflict. You know, that's the reason why I'm here.
Absolutely.
So
Real quick, I'm going to remember where we left off here, but I think I want to take this important time to reflect. I think that there may be people listening to this that I want to talk to in that doesn't invalidate any of your conflict, like you mentioned, but I also think it's an important historical point to reflect on. I think that there's a lot of us that have family members that rocked through the civil rights movement, and I think there's a lot of violence. I mean, I think this country comes from a space of a lot of trauma. But I think that it feels like a different ball game when you're talking about some of the conflict so I'm from Sudan, and Sudan's like right now in war. Like, and we left it then because of war. It was so fractured that it's now two different countries. Now, I think that America has found a way to fight a similar identity battle, but slightly less violent. Just not still violent. Don't get me wrong, still violent, but slightly less violent. But I think that historical context is important to even having an opinion about this conversation in relation to trauma, right? In relation to what is going on. My father personally, in the spirit of vulnerability, like I was just talking to my mom recently, and it's recently become important to me to kind of truly understand my lineage beyond myself. I think that, like, you know, growing up, my identity was important to me, and it still is, but I think now I appreciate my identity in relation to my heritage a lot more than I think that I gave thought to when I was a kid. And I mean, like, I also had a lot going on, and like I didn't really have time to think about it in terms of emotion. But my father was tortured, like literally tortured, and we had to flee Sudan to Libya to seek asylum. And I think that generational trauma that I think is important to talk about is part of that. But
damn.
Before people start, you know, like, yeah, there's conflict, man. It comes in spectrums and gradients, but I think I want to put perspective to what it is that you're saying before we continue. Sorry, forgive me. Go ahead.
No, that's it. Yeah, it's crazy, honestly. Like I didn't know, and that's another thing too. Is like Africa is so big, the history is so vast and deep. Like as an African, sometimes I don't feel like I've done my due diligence in like educating myself. You know,
and I get that 100%, especially since we grew up kind of around here.
No, yeah, totally American.
Absolutely, right? Like, so I'm from Sudan, and I think there comes a lot of pieces about that. But I think I'm studying about my heritage like I would out of a textbook, because I mean, like, I'm so far removed from it. And I think that you and I really grew up in a space here in Fargo that was like really unique. Like, we were just on the come up in terms of cultural identity and like what it means for us to grow up around people. And I think that you and I found our different groups and we navigated, but I think that it's not without being said that there weren't a ton of culture around us like there is now, especially in Fargo. But I mean,
this shit is crazy.
It's blown up.
Wild.
It's crazy right now.
It's
sorry,
actually that's it.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's like it's amazing, but it's gives me a lot of hope.
Yeah.
I'm glad to see it. You know, it's never like where was this when I was a kid? You know, I'm just grateful that this generation has a little bit of that. You know what I mean? Because, yeah, like, I don't think that people are, like, super inherently, like, racist around here. I just don't think that they've had, like, exposure. It's like the population, especially when we were growing up, was, like, so homogenous. And, like, and you know what, though? It has also low-key felt like the most racist it's ever been. Like, and like, I think that's like on some like Trump shit.
Truth.
You know,
truth. I think there's a lot, because I mean, I'm going through my socials and there's a lot of people whom, like I was friends with, that I think that when some of that race stuff kind of re-sparked up, it's like, wow, like, bro, I didn't, like, I was sitting next to you in class, homie. Like, I didn't realize you had these thoughts about black people.
Yeah. And like, dude, I think they just get like, all right, we're just gonna go straight forward,
dude, go, please. And, dive in.
There's this book called like The White Man's Last Stand or something like that. Or I don't remember exactly what it was. But it talks about how like you used to get away with like just being white. Yeah. You know what I mean? And like now there's like too many minorities that are like educating themselves, that have like master's degrees. Yep. You feel me? Have skills, right? And like, and it's also just more diverse period. Like Latinos are like really, you know what I mean? Whatever, absolutely. Just in general, just a more diverse landscape. So it's not enough to be white anymore. Yeah. And people that like are scared shitless, you know, that they're losing power. And I think that like, it's like a lot of people are just scared and scared of change and things look different. I think it's just like more like ignorance than anything, to be honest. And like people are like scared, like, cause like up close, like, okay, some more background. Like my mom remarried, my parents divorced when I was 5. And then my mom met my stepdad, cool as hell.
Yeah, he is. I mean, he's dope as hell.
Yeah, cool as hell. Norwegian dude from Ada, Minnesota. And like, I'll be out there sometimes, you know? And like, these guys are like, that's where a lot of like the more rural communities, this is like super, like they're very conservative.
Absolutely.
You know? It's like pseudo-religious, you know? Like a lot of times.
It's an ideology for sure.
Like, I'm saying, like, and like, you know, there's like that religious element, but I feel like a lot of people aren't like devout Christians necessarily. It's just what they know. It's like their framework, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And, but long story short, I guess, like, I don't know. I see a lot, like the older generation, at least, like, I don't know. I'm not trying to make excuses for it. I just like see it a lot, you know? I'm like surrounded by it. And I think a lot of that came out with like Trump was like it just empowered, you know, like a certain demographic, you know what I mean? And like almost made them just like ran on fear.
I think
not to get crazy political, but that's really what it was.
I think there's a way for us to have conversations about politics and trauma and these important concepts without getting too muddled in emotion. I think emotions are part of it, but I think that if we process things logically through historical context, we can all reach an agreement. And I think part of this is that I think the understanding that I've come to process from a lot of what was going on, that like the Trump conversation at least allowed a vast majority of Caucasian human beings to like rally around something. I think that there was a long time where it was just trying to figure out where everybody fit. And I think that's still the conversation. But I think the fear component of what you're talking about is like, we can't ignore that there is like, it's within fairly recent history that a lot of the progressions that you and I are like taking advantage of now that happened. And I think really, you know what I mean? Like it was just like around the corner. And in terms of progress and like what it means to grow, I think that it's always a bit latent. Like the ideology of one generation usually impacts the previous generation or the next generation. Sorry.
Totally. Yeah, it really wasn't that long ago. That is true.
Yeah. But I mean, I think to add to what you're saying though, that doesn't mean that just because it's like understood and justified that it still doesn't hurt. You know, it still doesn't process as like, okay, this is interesting. Like, what do I do with this information now? And I think that like, I think for the most part, as a human being who lived in North Dakota, that I never really was afraid of being pulled over by the cops. Like I got tickets all the time, you know, but I mean, for the most part, people are like generally respectful here. And I don't want to take that for granted. But I think that we're allowed to have nuanced conversations. We're allowed to get nitpicky now.
I guess the one thing I'd like to note is just like the conversation or like the idea of like, it wasn't that long ago, right?
Yeah.
Is real.
Absolutely.
And it's true. It really wasn't. And it takes like, it's like realistically one generation away, you know, maybe 2 or whatever. Like one, yeah.
I mean, like I would talk to some people's grandparents, my friend's grandparents, and it's very likely that within their history. Absolutely. Like they saw that shit. They saw it, bro. Like they lived it. Dude. Right?
And but so there's that, and that's real. But what I'm saying too is like, I also feel like because of Trump, it got worse. But to be fair,
Absolutely
I've
did.
also, that I really do. Cause like I said, growing up, it really wasn't, it was cool. But also we were like one of how many black people were in our grade?
A handful.
And we were like the type of people to just talk to anybody.
Everybody.
Like we were just social people, so it's like we were maybe safe.
And honestly, a lot of the black folk that even were beyond us were like in ELL class, like early language.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah,
like they were segregated on their own terms. Like we didn't interact with them motherfuckers. Like,
and like not to get too crazy too, because like sometimes people are like, oh, like, you never dated a black girl in high school or whatever, and I'm like, there really wasn't.
There wasn't any, dude.
Black girls.
There was like some mixed girls here and there, but like even when I think the only girl really that I interacted with that was of like significant color was like really that I had a crush on was somewhere in like early middle school, like 6th grade or something. But like the girls around me that I found attractive were all white girls, and like that impacts me, and I'm not gonna feel bad about that. Like,
but also statistically, the school was like 98% white.
100%.
Like type vibe.
100%.
Yeah, it was so white actually.
And the developing brain, right? Like the teenage brain is attracted to the things within context. Like it's attracted to the things. It's attracted to the girl who walks by you in school. That's why, like, a lot of the OG, like early developing OnlyFans ones are like by classmates, right? Like these girls are making money off of like old classmates, because I think that's where we develop our sexuality. That was the girl next door. Literally, that was the girl next door. And in terms of sexual development and what it means for the brain to find things attractive, like, you and I had crushes on girls who were white, bro.
Yeah, also, but there, man, I'm not gonna go into the OnlyFans thing.
Different conversation. I think different conversation. I think that's also a hustle. I think that's a grind, bro. I think that's a grind.
Let me just start say this right now. I'm not hating.
Agreed.
I'm not.
You can't hate.
I cannot hate.
You can't
get
hate.
your money.
Get your money.
Period.
Yeah.
No one has to be here. Things cost money, and if it's there, you feel me? I'm not knocking anyone's hustle. You feel me?
I mean, it could be its own sport, in my personal opinion.
I'm just like, it's also like an emotional. Okay,
There's a lot.
There's a lot. Whatever. Another conversation. But going back to just attraction.
Yeah, but to rewind, to refocus, forgive me, I think it's tangents. To refocus, though, I think what's important is that we grew up in a predominantly white space, and I think that impacts the way that we see it. And we were friends with a lot, like pretty much, like my best friends were white folk, right? White. And I didn't even like, oh yeah, like I'm brown, and I laughed at it, but like I didn't really think about it until Trump. And I think at the very least, it gave a conversation, and all of a sudden it kind of blew up, and like then you're out of high school and whatever, blah blah blah. But anyway, I want to talk about and reflect more on your personal development in terms of like your personal values, on like how it is that you live your life right now. Because at least from the outside, I'm sure there are nuances to it. I don't know your story in its entirety, but I think from the outside, from what I perceived and the reason that you're in this welcome space for me is that I've always cherished what it looked like from the outside for you to live your life. Because I think I've always viewed it as authentic, radically present and true to who you are. And I feel like for me personally, that's just a new realization.
Totally,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's real. African mom.
Yep.
Artist history. Like my grandpa was an artist. Like there's art all up in my family, right? But I think that like having an African mom, coming from a place of trauma, like realizing like how unstable that was, and like her having like a need for control for survival. And then on top of like trying to raise her kids in like a different system that she's accustomed to, different cultures, like all this, whatever. Like long story short, my mom's really strict, always been a creative dude. And I think that like, honestly, looking back now, and this might be the first time I've really thought about it and like really appreciated it, because it really sucked.
Yeah. I hear you on that.
Feel me? I hear you on that. But I think that literally, dude, just a lot. I don't know. It's just like, yeah, I know what it's like to not have like a ton of freedom. I'm going to do me.
I hear you on that.
Does that make sense?
I hear you 100%. And I think that too, I think in as much as we can grant, I'm going to speak about my mom because I don't want to reflect on your mom in any meaningful way. But in my personal opinion, right now, the ways that I view my personal life, I think at the time it was really difficult for me to understand what it was that justified that level of strictness, but also I think from their perspective it viewed as discipline. And I think in my more adult brain now, I think I can reflect on it in terms of trauma. You know, like there was, if you think about this radical move from Africa to the United States, right? Like that's a grind move. Like that's a move of like future. And I think that oftentimes our parents were reflecting us as assets, because my dad reflected about me as assets. Like he wanted to start a business with me, and he wanted to, like, he's like, you are part of the investment. And I think it's really difficult because I think in terms of, I think that my dad viewed me pretty readily as an extension of him. Mm-hmm. And I think he wanted me to have the discipline that he came from. If anything, it was a milder form, because like I said, homie was in the war and he literally got tortured and released. And the only opportunity of his release, he like flew to Libya. And that's the only reason I'm here. Like split. Like I can have opinions about my father. My childhood sucked. But I mean, like when I sat down and like reflected on the story, like the whole story, I'm like, I get it. You know, it's shitty. It's really shitty, especially for you in that moment. But I think understanding the context is also important. But I think to go back, I appreciate what you're saying. Like, I think like we can sit here and I can appreciate your mom, and I think your mom's come a long way. And your mom's also growing and evolving, and she probably will reflect some of those things for herself, much way that my mom does now, and be like, well, I had to do what I had to do with the resources that I had at the time. And that also doesn't excuse whatever it is that came from it. I mean, we are literally living ourselves as a product of that experience, for better and for worse. But I think part of it is what we choose to do with that story. And I think your choice in that story is beautiful, because I think like I said, from my perspective, is always like what Yann is doing is radical self-expression.
Amen. Thank you, bro. Yeah. I also think that I just can't help it.
I respect that a lot, actually.
Honestly. Like, that, shout out to my mom. But also, yeah, I don't know. Like, I always told myself, like, dude, if I'm going to have to work 40 hours of life somewhere, I got to be happy. Amen. Like, life is the most valuable thing. Like, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And, but, you know, I also wish that I would have had more structure, like, growing up. Like, I really, like, now at, like, 28, it's really when I'm, like, honing in on structure. Like, realizing, like, that it does allow me freedom, or, like, you know what I mean? Like, just, like, to lock in. Like, I also have, like, so much more shit going on.
There's a lot. So you need a calendar now. I've always dude, I bought a roller bag. Some people know this story. I bought a roller bag. And I've like, when I was growing up, I hated the idea of a roller bag. I was made fun of people who had roller bags, but that thing is so functional, because I'm doing 20 different things at the same time. Like literally a roller bag, like the handle. It's got like multiple compartments in it. It's around the corner over here. But I think that's just like one small example of what it is that I'm trying to say, is that like right now we're at a point of our lives where discipline matters, because context is important to development and skill set. You need to understand what it is that you're being disciplined for, because I agree with that sentiment like no other. And for a long time I was like, I'm a school person, whatever, blah blah blah. But I think that I needed purpose now to even understand what discipline is, because I'm trying to show up for who I want to be. I'm disciplined and uncomfortable now for who it is that I'm trying to craft. And that guy in the future is going to appreciate the work that I did. But I didn't really have like, what is it that I'm being disciplined for? Plus, like I think you can probably relate. Like you were passing, classes fairly easy, and we can like dabble because our minds are just geared for crafting, whatever that craft is, you know?
Yeah, I feel like I've always had something to be disciplined about.
Ooh, tell me about that. That's different than my experience. Please, I appreciate this a lot. Yeah. Please tell me your experience of that.
Like, I've always had something I was building. I've always had like my own hustle, something that I felt like was like an investment. Like starting in middle school, we had like a skate team. You know, we had like, we would just,
I forgot about that.
Stuff like that. Like, yeah, it's like when I was like making my first websites. I think I've like been into branding for so long. Dang. I just love brands. I love building brands. That's what taught me. I don't know. Plus, like, I don't know, on skateboarding, I was so locked in on skateboarding that.
Yeah, you do it. Yeah, you and Anthony.
And I actually just skated with Anthony like twice this week.
That's crazy, dude. Yeah, I love that. I love that. I mean, honestly, dude, like Anthony, that's been his release, his craft, his passion. I think that part of my story is very significant in terms of Anthony because I then also had something to kind of connect to, and I think you in that connection to skateboard culture was always there, and I appreciate that. In the spirit of conversation about brands, though, I want you to tell me your story of brand development. Who were you then? What did you try to develop? The energy that you were fostering, and how has that evolved over the years?
Totally. As far as brand development, I don't know. I think that like my infatuation with brands started with like always wanting to have something to call my own. Always loved the concept of building stuff, but like not in like a blue collar.
Yes,
You know
a
what I
different
mean?
spirit.
In a different spirit. I've always had like some sort of sense of purpose for some reason. Like my whole life, dude. I remember being like in like 3rd grade, just being so, and maybe because I've always like just believed in God in a way.
Let's do it, dude. I love these conversations because I think one of the most important things to reflect on for me is I think religion has always been a grapple for me, but I think more so, I think my purpose has evolved quite a bit. And I appreciate talking about purpose because I don't know that I was hanging out in my younger years really trying to understand what my purpose was. I was just trying to figure out what it meant for me to succeed. I just wanted to appear successful. Like, what does it mean for a human being to appear successful? And I ignored the purpose piece, honestly. I was like, oh, I'm good at this thing, so I'm going to pursue it. But what does it mean for purpose? Talk to me about God and your purpose, please.
Okay. In that light, it's a little different. Like, I don't know if I've always had purpose necessarily. I've always had purpose, which is to be like, to do good, period.
Yeah, no, I appreciate
But
that.
it's not like, like it's not like I'm here for this. I'm locked in. Like, you know what I mean? Like maybe that's what you mean too, is like something to really lock in on. But like a brand is something to lock in on, like no lacking.
Yes.
But like, I don't know, dude. My mom would always like pray with us when I was younger. We'd always pray before bed, and like, I don't know, dude. She did a pretty good job like of getting me introduced to spirituality, I think. But dude, I swear to God, my whole life, I've always just known like deeply inside of me that I'm gonna do something good for this world. Like, period. Like, I literally remember being like a kid in my room, just like so excited, like, oh, I wonder what I'm gonna do when I grow up. Like, maybe I'll cure a disease. Like stuff I swear, bro. Like just like stuff like that. And like, so, but I know I gotta take care of myself first.
And can we talk about this? Because I think I've personally struggled with what this means. Because I think for a long time I have been taught to be ashamed of radical self-love. It comes off as selfishness or whatever it is, and I've always felt like there's no time to me than right now that I feel so empowered to truly be my own cheerleader, to craft. And I think that self-love component is incredibly important to my story right now. And I appreciate you bringing it up because I think it's incredibly important. And I want to also reflect on my ability to grow and to foster has a lot to do with the fact that I'm here for myself, and I appreciate and I love the people around me, but nobody knows what you're capable of like you. Nobody really knows your whole story. Even your parents, right? Like they for many years, from our parents' perspective, we were gone from 7 to 4, and if we had activities, we were gone longer than that. So our parents don't know our whole story. And then like during the evening hours, we're away from our friends and we're just hanging out with our parents. Nobody knows you like you know you. So I don't know why I'm feeling bad about other people limiting my capabilities. You're like, actually, no, from my perspective, this is what I think that you're capable of. And it's weird to me that you think that you're capable of more than that. And I'm like, of course you think that because you only know a limited, like, and it's also code switching. Like we're also like hanging out with our friends and it's one identity. When we go home, we have to act and reflect differently around our parents, right? Our culturally different parents. That's code switching. So who are you authentically if you're constantly split between perspective?
Dude,
right?
I think I was blessed. I never really felt like I had to code switch too much from the crib to at home.
Dude, I cannot relate to that. Please tell me about that. Because I feel like I was code switching all the time, dude. all the time.
I think my mom might have just been. I think my parents are, especially my mom, right?
Yeah.
It's like she had a degree in English before she came here.
Wow.
So she was pretty far like ahead already, kind of like she like had decent English, I think.
For sure.
Like, you know, like I feel like maybe you know might have had to were more of a crutch for your parents. Maybe not. I'm not trying to speak on your situation,
go ahead,
but like,
go ahead, please.
Like even just like maybe like I don't really have like memories of, and I know this is like common for a lot of like refugee children, right?
Yep.
Like helping your mom like with bills, like read them, you know, or whatever, you know what I mean?
No, I hear you.
Like,
I hear you 100%.
So I'm saying like maybe like my mom was already like maybe, and not take this however, you know, with a grain of salt, but maybe my mom was like assimilated more, or like
hit the ground running,
and but was also just like more comfortable in this culture, period.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So she didn't really ever like, she was always more comfortable than, not necessarily more comfortable than me because it's all I knew, but she was enough to like, you know, it's just mom, that's just, you know, for a long time I didn't even realize, like maybe I was just ignorant. Like she's like, my friends one time were like, you know, your mom has an accent? I was like, what? No, she doesn't. And then I heard it and I was like, oh shit. You know, like finally, like something out. I was like, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like it was just,
so really what I'm hearing in this beautiful story is that it does feel to me that your mom has always been a type of individual to kind of foster your passions. She like, I mean, whatever quality that you're describing now, it feels like on some level she appreciated independence, even if it came with a few caveats.
No, I guess like, no.
Tell me, please, tell me your story.
Like, I feel like I just never really had a code switch, maybe because in my mind, like this was just my life. Like I'm young. I don't know. I've always just been Yann. Like, maybe it goes back to that, because like I'm thinking about this now too for the first time. Like, you know, like she was. Like, I'm saying like it wasn't like so African at the crib that, you know what I mean?
I hear you.
It was really never like it was like part of my life. Or like, and we're like speaking French at home. You know, but it was never, and we're like eating African meals, but it's just like, it was just all I knew. Like, it was just like, this is how I am at home and this is how I am at school. But I was blessed enough to like always just be Yann. Like, I never really had to put on another mask. I never had to like, you know, it's not like I have to be more polite at home. It wasn't like so rigid. Like, my mom was strict, you know what I mean? Like an African mom, and like expected me to do whatever she said. But it wasn't like so rigid at home where, you know, I felt like I had to be a whole ass another person. You know what I mean?
No, I feel that. And I think that's an important contract. Because I think this even comes to the conversation about what it means to identify as African. Africa's a continent, not a country. Right? And I think that even within the country, if we're even talking about demographic specific, there's people, and their people are different and their experiences are different. And I think there's this conversation I even find myself doing it time to time of just like conglomerating experience. And I think that I appreciate this conversation because I think that there's culture, right? There's what it means for us to grow up as Africans. Because I think it felt like, we had some bond by the fact that we were just immigrants together. Even though like we were completely different countries, you might as well have came from I don't know, India in relation to where I came from. But it's a different world, but we came in on this thing of what it means for us to grow up. And I think I appreciate this conversation because I think I almost created a separate identity in order for me to live independently. Because I didn't even know, because I think my parents really wanted me to identify as African. And I mean that openly. I remember like, because my dad was even just struggling with me just not understanding where we were in terms of, my mom was more light-skinned than my dad. And my dad came from a completely different world than my mom. And they were just trying to find, like, they didn't even know their own identities. And then they tried to figure, and then like, I was just kind of lost in the middle. But I think your mom at the very core, at least allowed you the ability or the safety or the
100%.
space.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Do you also feel like maybe because like you grew up Islamic, right?
Yes. I think, yes. And also an important conversation.
And so I think it's a little different too.
Yeah.
Like I know,
Yeah.
and also like you grew up with an African dad for real. And my African dad was always to be honest, my African dad is chill.
That's dope.
Like, and like I didn't like my parents divorced, right? So I really didn't see too much of him like later on in life. You know, I'd spent like summers in Minneapolis.
Yeah.
But I know like enough from like being a kid, and honestly like before he moved to Minneapolis, and I would still see him, you know what I mean? But like I would see him a lot more when he lived in Fargo. And I spent a lot of time with him, you know, so I really do feel like I know that guy. But like my mom was like pretty strict or whatever. It's like do what I say now, when I do it, no questions asked type vibe. It was just like kind of just common, whatever.
Yeah.
Right. But my dad was like, okay, Yann, it's 3:00 right now. I need you to have your room done by 8. You can do whatever you want, but at 8, this room needs to be clean. And that was lit.
That sounds dope.
That
sounds
was
like
lit,
a good
bro.
parent.
Yeah, that was super cool.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm gonna take that if I ever have children or whatever. Like that was really dope, you know, because it allowed me to have choice. It was enough to have like, what are they called when you like bumpers? You know, when you like go bowling.
Oh,
it's like little guiding things.
Yeah, little training wheels, kind of like allow you to the bumpers along the.
And I didn't resent the guy. So like, you know, like I don't know. It's like sometimes when you're like so free spirited, like like that whole like like it's not cool, you know, especially with like my mom was like stressed out too, you know, she had like a bunch of jobs and like whatever. So, and I think that's another thing though too. Like my dad was like always like a calm, like more like of a Norwegian for real, like not American, like this rat race bullshit, you know. He was like communal, like very chill, like very just wants to like do something meaningful. And my mom was like, that's what another thing too, like my mom is like very American and like her entrepreneurial spirit. She's a go-getter, like for real. You know what I mean?
She
like
grinds,
she's a doer too.
She's a grinder.
And she knew what she wanted and she got that.
Yeah.
You know.
And I mean, I think the fruits of her labor are evident, bro. Like the world around her flourishes in beautiful abundance. And I honestly, like, here's a story, right? So my coworker and very good friend Maddie is friends with a different another friend of mine. And she went to one of the galas that your mom put on.
Fire.
Yeah. And I was trying to figure out what it is, and like we got to talking, and I think that without getting to too much detail about what it is that they're navigating, but I think that your mom has her boots to the ground in terms of having an impact in the community that it resonates beyond us. Like it's literally communal impact. And I think there are very few examples in my life of like that true abundant change. And I think honestly though, I think there's also been a lot of people around me who have represented to a high caliber impact. And I think your mom has always been that type of person, but you also just know her as mom, right? And I think the world is kind of like looking at her from the outside. She ran for office and she's got a book and like all these different things. But like, I think the conversations of our family is complex at all times. And I think the story of family is incredibly important. However, I think that whatever you chose to do with those examples in your life, I think is really the conversation that I would like to have, right? I think in as much as the story and our parents are important, there's something about you that didn't succumb to expectation on a societal scale. You've never appeared to me as somebody who even allowed people to get in his perspective about what it is that you should be doing.
Damn, that's cool. The respect. Yeah, I definitely have though. I'm gonna pause this real quick and grab this chapstick out of my pocket.
Dude, do it. No, listen, we're hanging out at the crib. Yeah. This is comfortable. We're gonna take a break. Actually, you do that. I'm gonna pop in and make sure that these things are still going. We're gonna check on the time and we'll just take a quick break. Hello, Adel from the editing bay here. I just wanted to take this opportunity to let you know that under no duress or financial constraints of any kind, if you like vintage, like I like vintage, you know that they don't make them like they used to. Yann wakes up every day and takes any opportunity that he can get to find the highest quality clothes that he can get his hands on. You just have to go check it out. Tasty Vintage. How's your lips? How are your lips?
Well, it's so great, man.
And moisturized.
Oh, God,
Beautiful.
You're good.